Okay, welcome back to episode 3 of the Apocalypse podcast. I'm one co-host, Kyle. We have my brother,
Hi, I'm Taylor. I'm the other guy.
Taylor. And today we're going to do a film review of Interstellar. Also, I am recovering or currently have the flu or food poisoning or something. I don't know. I felt terrible yesterday. I feel a lot better today, but I still feel like weird and out of it. So
Is that why you have a bad opinion about this piece of art that you can have an opinion about?
okay, yeah.
Nailed it.
So yeah, let's begin. Since you've been dying to talk about it, apparently.
Okay, so this is what I'd say about Interstellar as a one-sentence review about my feelings of it. I think it has been accurately recorded in history of its quality. I don't think it's under or overrated. I think a 74 average is good for it, what this movie is. That's my one-sentence pitch there, is that I think it is significantly better in different ways than I remember and much worse in ways I don't remember.
Okay, interesting.
I had a very interesting experience watching this because the sequences that spoke to me, well, this was in this movie. I don't remember this, and it's interesting just to watch a movie 10 years later and be like, I'm just 10 years older now. The things that hit for me are just so different. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, because I am of sort of the opposite opinion. I have very much a fucking hate boner for Interstellar. I think it is the single most overrated, I don't know if I could say movie ever, but it's certainly absurdly overrated to me. I think it's, Christopher Nolan has this, I'm going to turn up my gain and see if that helps the audio. Anyways, Christopher Nolan is an extremely overrated director, and this is just another one of those movies that, anyone who ever talks about a sci-fi movie, it's always got to bring up Interstellar, always talk about how good Interstellar is. But when you break it down, at least how I do, I think the dialogue sucks. I think the characters and their motivations are inconsistent and all over the place. I think it is just absurdly overly stuffed with exposition. He tends to write his scripts like the audience is a bunch of fucking 12-year-olds who won't understand anything. So it's all just dumped on you via stupid characters. Like, for instance, in this movie, Cooper, Matthew McConaughey's character, he's just an idiot who doesn't know how anything works. Yet he just comes out of nowhere and gets to fly this spaceship. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me how dumb he is compared to what his pedigree is. I guess mostly my problem is with the characters in this and the dialogue. I mean, obviously the visuals are top notch.
Yeah, just to add to finally, you said something that doesn't make my skin crawl. I'm just kidding. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but the shots. I was remarking to Brianna of I just loved looking at the movie when it wanted to show me stuff in outer space. I just loved the way it looked and the scale and the scope, and I don't know. So I just wanted to highlight that was also something I thought was so sick with the visuals. I'm glad that that wasn't the one spot that you were as iffy about, because I also have some character qualms, and rewatching this, I have a different perspective, and I also noticed the Christopher Nolan writing style is I'm starting to totally see what you're saying, where every scene is, huh? That doesn't really make sense. Well, actually, it's kind of clear if you think about it this way. And but yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. I didn't want to let you finish with your thoughts.
Good qualities of the film are the absolute next gen visual effects. The filmmaking is also, very, very good. The music is kind of just like a cheat code to make you feel emotion, which I think
it worked on me.
I think it's a huge reason why people don't see a lot of the faults in this movie, is because the music just punches you in the gut and it immediately makes you want to cry. Even if the characters were just speaking gibberish or saying nonsense, you'd be like, "Oh my god, yeah, I feel for you." But it's yeah, the music is just a cheat to make you feel stuff.
I will
And
call out specifically this movie's particular level of emotional manipulation music is some of my favorite. Like I was really,
oh yeah,
I actually was like, is this a Hans Zimmer one? Because normally his music is exciting, not like emotional to me. I think of like kind of more of a Mission Impossible, like Inception to me is a much more actiony movie than it is like, oh, there's a sad story in it. But I feel like it's much more of a cerebral, like, whoa, look at these.
right.
I look at these visuals.
Yeah.
So like to hear and like I was like, is this a different composer? Because I'm getting such a different range of like feelings, and it's like, no, it's just
No, it's Zimmer.
That's his,
yeah, he expanded a little bit. He was known for a while for his just like ba-ba kind of style of music. All of his music just did that, and then he expanded into better things like Dune and Blade Runner and all that is really, really good, and it's all by Hans Zimmer. What I was gonna say,
was that your only other? So I think what you're getting at is everything technical in this movie. You so far is like this is subjectively good.
I wanted to give it a score too. I rated it 3 out of 5. Right, so definitely not on.
Yeah, wow, that's certainly not as nasty of a star rating as the vibes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because when I dislike something, I dislike it a lot, but I also like something and I recognize what makes this movie good. And it, like I'm saying, just the visual effects, the cinematography, the filmmaking, the music, the acting, all of that warrants at least a 3 out of 5 to me. It's just some of the stuff in this, brings it down from a 10 to a 6 or, from a 5 to a 3, whatever.
So then what I would say, it was interesting because I think Jessica Chastain's character is the single one that how do I word this? Her adult scenes, it didn't work for me, and we can get into that more later, but I did find that interesting of like, because I used to see the clips when they show Cooper getting explained the black hole, right? And the way so this is a really dumb perspective, and maybe I'm jumping the gun. I don't know if you want to like talk about the movie in order, but I kind of just want to talk about this right now because it's on my mind. But that the way Cooper interacts with the other astronauts to me reads as this dude, because he's a NASA, like he is smart as hell, like that's objectively true.
Yeah.
When it comes to the character, what I am hearing is someone knows what it is, but not like, okay, how to explain this? If I were to ask you how you did your job specifically, I might know the general gist of what you're doing, but the hyper specifics and the why, and like maybe to make your greater point, the guy just talks more. In a lot of ways, I feel like it's more about, because I'm like of two minds. One, I think it's written in a way that like could be much better delivered, but the way that I didn't feel that, it's not that Cooper is dumb, it's that they couldn't think of a better way to present this information to the audience than just to have Cooper be an inquisitive, learned guy. Like he's just listening to people smarter than him and listening to him. Or listening to them. That's kind of how I read those.
I don't think so, because he straight up like asks about questions that are so like, 8th graders learn about this shit in their science class, and this guy's like, how do black holes work? Like relativity, huh? And they have to explain it to him point blank. He's very clearly a vessel for what Christopher Nolan thinks is a brain dead idiot audience, and that pisses me off. I feel like personally insulted when they over explain like relatively simple, haha pun, relatively simple concepts like that, where it's like you really think people watching Interstellar are going to be too stupid to know how like that, like the gravity of a black hole and moving at light speed changes how time works, and like
Kyle,
all these concepts that are fairly basic.
I literally don't understand.
You didn't know it?
No, that's what I'm saying though, is like, unfortunately you're making a massive assumption about the level of intellect people have about space and how time works and how relativity works. It is like, I can understand the general, like, I know the words you're saying, and I recognize the phrases. I don't know the science of like, what does it mean when time is relative?
But they don't even really explain the science.
But I guess I was going to say they explain it in a way that I can digest it and be understood the weighting and the impact of it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that that was a good way to handle it, but I will say that, like, as someone who isn't an idiot, I did need those, like, the movie is really science driven, right? Because, like, at the end of the day, everything is based on NASA research. So all the characters are deeply scientific people.
Yeah, he had like a high up NASA guy work with him on the script
I'm sorry.
time.
To clarify, I'm talking about in universe, not like Christopher Nolan, the guy. I know that they do have a physicist, but I mean the movie is basically from the point of perspective of scientists, and so like a lot of the plot points are even driven around like what is theoretically real science. I don't need to know your variables, but I would like to understand what. You know, I hate the sci-fi jargon of like, oh, we just need 17 more crumples before the activated zone de-emphasizes the space time.
That's okay. Hold on. Let me stop you. You know, real life science jargon can be over the top, but there is an ocean of difference between blatantly explaining how a black hole works to a fucking NASA pilot and getting into the specifics of like quantum mechanics. There's an ocean of difference, and I think Christopher Nolan does not handle it well. I think there's much more nuance he could do in order to get certain concepts across, or even maybe leave some of your audience in the dark. Make them a little confused because it's a science fiction movie and we're listening to scientists talk to each other. That's the other thing that bothers me, is that in universe, as you're saying, these scientists would never speak to each other in the way that we hear them talking to each other. They would not be dumbing things down and repeating the same things over and over to each other in the way that they do in this movie, because they'd all be on a similar playing field. Now, I get that they made Cooper be like this ex-pilot who hasn't flown in a while, and you know, physics isn't his specialty, so you can kind of get away with him being a little dumber because all he knows how to do really is fly spaceships. I don't know much else besides that, so they can get away with it. I understand like how they made Cooper the way he is, but I still think he should be way smarter than given in the movie. Okay. The other thing you could do is not have Cooper actually ask stupid questions. Just have people like maybe have a character over explain something. But they don't do that too much, and it struck a wrong chord with me listening to these scientists all talk to each other like they were, you know, audience members watching, when they just wouldn't speak to each other like that.
And to clarify, I am with you on that he is writing this stuff to be not in universe humans talking, but you're watching a movie in which two characters are explaining the thing to the people watching. Like, now,
yeah, and that pulls me out of it immediately. I'm, I guess, so disconnected from the movie.
And you know what's very interesting?
Its, like, grounding power.
My experience watching that is I was so drawn in by the opening 20-ish minutes. I wrote so many positive things about. I love this natural disaster that isn't explicit or explained or fantastical. I love
that too. That's like how The Road is. You're plopped into this universe and you know something shitty happened and you got to watch these people fight through it. I love that premise too.
Yeah, and I loved that this movie was really about like, I guess before I get too lofty with like, oh, the messages I derived out of it and stuff. But I loved these just like kind of, yeah, as you explained, like it isn't really, you know, all the details aren't given to you directly or overtly, or it's folded in way later. You know, they kind of have two total lines about, oh, this is the last season of Okra. Like, that's the last harvest we ever have. And, like, it's just, like, little comments here and there. Just really, really cool. I loved the framing of the documentary, except I don't think they utilized... Like, I think when they, like, kind of, like, were interstitialing it in the beginning with, like, here's a farmer, and then that's his daughter talking on the I just don't think it linked up super well, and like ended up they show that documentary and like as Cooper's on the space station at the end.
I forgot that was even in the movie.
Yeah, well, because I loved
it was good initially.
Because like them talking about like, oh yeah, we just always set the plates and the cups upside down on our table because you never know when and it's like those little like cool in-universe ways that people were living.
World building, yeah.
And like something I really loved too was with the parent-teacher conference that Cooper has, and he talks to what is essentially, I guess, like each of the kids' teachers. But there's something to be said about, like, I don't know what year this movie takes place in, or if their history is different than ours, because they even talk about being a caretaker generation, and like the idea is like we need people to stop going to school, we need them to be on farms, we need less educated people, we need less engineers and more farmers, and that's just like a cool, like, that phrase alone, you craft such a unique vision of this world that will be different than someone else imagining the same scenario. You know, what does the workforce look like? How many people are left? What is, like, our nations? Are we more united, less united? And it feels, I think he did a really good job of showing a species slowly dying. Like, and that this movie is relentlessly dour. Like, everything that can, the irony, I guess, of Murph's Law, everything that can happen will happen. Every bad outcome does happen. Every choice they make is the wrong one, but it works out eventually.
So, you mentioned, obviously we're talking about world building here. This is the kind of stuff that I almost hate myself for thinking the way that I do, because I ruin things.
Yeah. Oh, you do. No worries.
We're talking about a world that's been ridden by this like Dust Bowl era style of sandstorms and stuff for how long? What's the implication? 60 years they've been dealing with this?
At least a generation. Like, Cooper as an adult, it seems to be like that they grew up with this blight, as they call it.
So my question is, if you're growing up with this blight, why the fuck do none of the buildings have shutters? Why are all of these houses, they look exactly like they would in the middle of a normal cornfield? So you're telling me that there's what?
What I'll say is that the actual end of world shit is the blight. Like, crops are just dying from unknown reasons, and now Dust Bowls are starting. So just to be, like, fair and balanced, if you will, the Dust Bowl
storms were recent?
Yes, they are escalating. It's kind of just like the planet is, like, getting worse as time goes on, but the actual dust and stuff, and like they're not even sure what the dust is, and it seems to have gotten worse over time. It's always existed, but it seems to have gotten worse. So, like, I think, but to answer your question of like why aren't they adapted better, and I think that's kind of what is the problem, is that people aren't adapting. They aren't they just think it's going to go away. Like, they just, like, the whole, like, kind of premise of the 3 planets out there that they finally get to and stuff, it's like someone had to go and, like, burn down the old to build up something new. We can't keep sustaining the old world. And I think that, so it could be, I don't know, like, you make a good point. It's like, why isn't the world reflecting the state that it's in? And I think that thematically is kind of addressed in the movie by, like, the older brother just still does corn, does the exact thing his dad was doing, which was failing, and it's slowly getting worse. His son, his daughter, like, one of the best parts of this movie, I didn't know the first time I watched it, he has a kid that dies objectively, like, he loses a child, and I think the woman that he's with in the movie, no, it might be the same woman, I don't know, there seemed to be implication that, like, he might be divorced. I don't know. But he's not leaving the house. Like, the kid's got a wet cough, and, Topher Grace's doctor's like, they need to leave. Right. And he's like, no, we're not leaving.
Dude, that shit pissed me off so much, too. That specific scene where Topher Grace does almost nothing. And by almost, I mean he does literally nothing wrong. He goes, whoa, your kids are really sick. You guys got to move. Boom, gets punched in the face. That made me livid while watching it, because it was it's complete fucking nonsense that a person would do that. Even somebody that's like as stubborn and stupid as Cooper's son, like, he literally just said, like, yeah, no, you guys have to leave immediately. Your kids are really sick. Boom, punches him in the face.
Well,
like, what?
Okay,
I was floored by that. I was like, they are, like, drama baiting so hard with shit like that. It's, I don't know.
So this is the problem. I have a little bit of your viewpoint of this is, like, you as a rational person with the world not ending, being constantly being abandoned by your family, all these horrible things. Someone is telling you you have to, like, I am taking your kid and I am leaving. Like, it
They
is,
didn't say
I'm
that.
not, Kyle. I know he didn't say those words, but I'm trying to get you to see a different, like, perspective on, like, where emotional headspaces are at. I don't think it's a rational reaction, right? But, like, you could see that it wasn't like this out of nowhere, this seems really stupid, why the fuck would that happen, as much as the guy's at his limit. He's taking the only thing he has left. It's so clear how important family is to him. So all of these things, and this guy is the representation of the force that is trying to, like, kind of ruin his life, pull his family apart. The last thing he has.
No, I disagree. I disagree with that. I think I'm looking at it even from the perspective of the characters and their motivations, and that's what made me so mad. Was I was like, even within this world of Cooper's son being the way that he is, I do not see him reacting like that. You're telling me he's not going to scream first, or launch a plate across the room and break it and say, no, I'm not leaving. Get out of my house. He's going to go from, like, barely conversing to a punch in the face? No. I hard disagree that even with the stakes on what's at stake for him, I don't think he would do that.
Fair. I mean, I can't convince you. I'm just saying I guess. No, that's all. That's fair.
So that brings me to another thing. Was Cooper's ability to leave his children basically on a whim on a journey that he may never come back from was also absurd to me. For, like, how much he supposedly loves Murph, he basically left with, hardly any convincing to just go. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, not even remotely. Because I just watched this last night. I feel very confident that he had to be convinced because he loves his kids so much. The whole point was, one, it was to save them. At the end of the day, he always thought and believed he was coming home, and if he wasn't coming home, he's getting them off the planet to live. So to me, it is a survival, like, it's a parent that is willing to do something he doesn't want to do to save his family. So
I, again, disagree with that, because there are, in fact, specific lines that Cooper says implying that he wants to leave. So he specifically mentions that humans were, what does he say? Something like humans were born on this planet, but we were never meant to die here. He specifically says, I've always felt like I've been destined for something greater. I'm paraphrasing, but he says something along those lines. There are tons of line drops and hints that Cooper wants to leave and he feels stuck. So I don't think he actually needs that much convincing at all. He found this place, said, like, hey, okay, fuck it, we'll leave. And they're like, well, you're a good pilot, you want to do this? And the next day he's like, yeah, I guess so, let's leave. That's how I viewed it, because I was specifically, I watched this last week. It's not like I watched this 5 months ago and I'm misremembering. I have a very fresh memory as well. And I think there's very specific motivation for him to want to leave, and then he just does. But also, he loves his daughter so much. Maybe he loves his son, I don't really know. They didn't show their relationship too in depth, but
it's just interesting, because the very lines you're saying to me explains why he was willing to do it. So, like, when he says that we're meant to live on the not to die here, was talking about, like, the species is dying on this planet. We shouldn't just sit here and walk to our graves. We should live. Like, the idea, and then, like, this, he loves the space exploration. That is probably why he could be convinced and why he is right. So that's more about establishing his character and why he'd be willing to do this, not this, like, kind of more malicious, like, I just want to get away, get out. And, like, I don't think that when he says these things, and it's like the idea is, like, I want to leave the family, it's that he thinks...
Okay, hold on. Let me stop you. It sounds like you're interpreting what I'm saying as implying Cooper is malicious and wants to get away. What I'm saying is there's a contradiction to me between Cooper's ease and willingness to leave and how much he supposedly loves his daughter. That's what I'm saying. There's a contradiction between his love for his daughter, but also how quickly he was able to be convinced to leave. I don't think it's malicious. He's not some asshole who wants to
But I
just
mean,
abandon
like,
his
if
kids.
he's being offered to literally save the species, like, I don't know, that seems like a pretty compelling thing to get anybody to hurt their daughter's feelings on the grand scale. Like, I don't know, if you were on a planet that was literally starving to death and someone's like, I think I have an idea that will save our entire species, including your family, and we can get everybody there, I think that's the most compelling thing to sell to someone who wants to be greater than just another farmer. So I don't know if it's
Well,
as contradictory in terms of like, oh, it wasn't hard to convince them. We just slapped something together. I think it was a little bit more thought out and like laid out to him in a way that isn't just like, oh, I know you want to get back out into space. I think it's much more, you know, got more meaning than just a kind of selfish motivation.
if you also remember when he shows up at the science base, whatever that place is called, I don't know what to call it. He says to what's Brand, Professor Brand, that's his name. He says to Professor Brand, you know, like, wait, you guys were going to launch this in, you know, a day or two, and I just showed up, and now you're asking me to do it? Like, what the heck? You guys were going to go anyway. And Professor Brand is like, well, yeah, you know, but I guess it's a good coincidence you showed up, because now we'll have you do it. So, to me, again, that says they had plans, they had pilots, they had somebody lined up to go do this, and then they just swapped that guy out.
No, so what they
Cooper.
said is, we don't have anyone better, but we don't have a choice. We need to launch this. So that's why they were so
Right.
quick to swap them, because they don't have a trained pilot. They don't have any more of them. And that's why they were like that specific. I will challenge you that it isn't that they had a good pilot and they just swapped him. They had what is basically a guy to do this because they don't have pilots anymore. There's nobody doing this work. There's no one with these skills. And he does. And that's why it's such a big deal to get him to go. And why Cooper feels more like it's his responsibility as someone with these skills to use them so that someone who's unskilled doesn't fuck it. Like, it's a better chance that he would make it.
Yeah. I don't remember them specifically saying that, like, they don't have pilots or they didn't have anyone good. I remember him saying we don't have a choice.
Yeah,
but
because
to
like,
me, I guess I didn't interpret that as meaning they had no skilled person to do this.
So
they just they have to.
because he asked, like, don't you have a pilot? And he's like, we have somebody. Like, what I hear that with the way he delivers somebody is like, we have a body. He's not a trained pilot, but he will pilot the machine. Like, because when you look at it, a good chunk of it's done by those sick-ass robots that have the coolest designs ever. But
Right.
so
Which also begs the question: why the fuck couldn't they have just flown everything? They co-pilot with him. They could have made it.
It looks like what the big deal is they can get you to up to like 5%. It's the manual, like, in the heat of the moment stuff they don't have.
The instincts or
Yeah.
whatever.
And I think they try to show that with, like, you know, Case flying the ship most of the time, and Cooper only when it's like I have to make turns or docks or whatever and all that.
Right. Okay, so then, because now here I have specific notes about a lot of characters that I could go over, and since I think we sort of covered the general, like, what we liked and didn't like about the movie overall, what our scores were.
I didn't give a score.
You said it's been very accurately represented, so I assume that means you gave it a 7 or 8 out of 10.
Okay, well, fine. Yes, it would probably be closer to the 8 than to the 7, but
Okay. Sure. So yeah, I mean, you gave it a 4 out of 5, I gave it a 3 out of 5. So what I have here, yeah, we just talked about this note about him leaving his kids a little too easily for my taste. Yeah, Cooper seeming to be kind of stupid.
okay. I'm actually
about
before
basic things.
we move on. This is the moment that I ugly sobbed when he was leaving, and Murph like trying to get him to stay, and like
Sure, yeah.
ever since
Telling him that like the Morse code says stay, and he's like, fuck you.
So
You
I
know
don't
anything.
think what really has changed in my life in the past 10 years is I more or less have a niece, right? So
Yeah.
I've been around this baby since October of 2020, and I've seen her grow and how much I've been around children, and as a 22-year-old watching this movie, I was like, yo, middle finger, kids are stupid, fuck all of them, they're dumb, they're lame. I hope, like, they're so annoying. I have no interest in them, they're stupid. I am completely different now, and I understand what it feels like to be loved unconditionally by a thing. It's not even my child, and I feel these.
Right.
So I have just that level of like heartbreak, and seeing that is something is very real to me now, and not just a thing a writer has to convince me is a sad thing. And so
Sure.
I ugly cried here. I could not stop. It was
Wow.
Matthew McConaughey's performance in this is so weird because, like, a lot of times when he delivers lines, it just sounds like a guy, but his ability to, like, break and go and show, like, that real vulnerability is just, it was incredible. And,
Oh, yeah.
and the child actress was not embarrassing herself, thank goodness. It, like, you know.
That's just Matthew McConaughey. I mean, in True Detective, it's the same way. He has.
It's that era where he.
amazing
Yeah, for sure. But I do
He
want
had-
to say that, like, that scene in particular hardly made it through. I had to pause it a little bit just to, like, recenter. It's man, the amount of just abandonment that happens in this movie is so brutal.
Right. Yeah, that's what got me was when he came back to the ship after the black hole planet.
God, that is probably one of the most unexpected climax, and like the music does it. It's just like the slow kind of peeling the layers back of what happened and what the intensity of that means, and like him sitting down and playing the videos back to back, and as they, oh my God. Oh,
Yeah, I mean, seeing 30, 20 something years of 23 years of your children growing up in the span of 10 minutes because you were on a planet for 2.5 hours. Like, yeah, it's a lot to wrap your head around, and then very, very.
I will say, but for the characters, I didn't really love anybody, and I think that's a Christopher Nolan
neither.
problem. Is that he usually doesn't write people that, like, I don't know, they're not. There's not a lot of peaks and valleys in his characters. They're all very smoothed out. Like, everyone is generally pleasant unless they're an antagonist. Or I did like Dr. Brand Jr. in terms of, like, what her role was, and, like, she was actually had motivation and like.
Right.
The
yeah,
drama
biases.
she caused, I understood, and, like, I believe that. And I think actually even Dr. Mann was awesome. Like, I think his role in that
man.
was really cool. And I
Can't
love
wait to talk about him.
Yeah,
I fucking hated him so much, and not, of course, because he was a dick and tricked them, but because, again, of how Christopher Nolan wrote his character.
Oh, really?
To me, it was
God,
so
this would
obscene.
be so
Yeah.
unpleasant for me, man. God.
This is what you signed up for, bro.
No, you.
That's how it works.
Man, I should have made us watch a movie you liked. Oh, wait, we can't really do that, can we?
I love a lot of movies. I'm
Yeah,
just
especially when they
critical
are
and-
ultra realistic. I think seems to be the biggest gripe for you is, like, if something veers off of, like, what your understanding of, like, its reality is, completely untethers you from being able to enjoy it. Is that fair?
Well, I mean, you make it sound like if something isn't a fucking documentary, I'm not going to
No.
it.
I mean, if it.
Ironically, I hate documentaries.
Oh my God.
No,
What?
that-
What does that even mean? I'm not going to investigate that statement. But what I'm
I
saying.
hate documentaries?
No, but what I'm saying is, like,
Watching them, they're boring as hell. I don't like them. I don't get entertainment from documentaries. I don't.
what I'm saying is that the universe that itself has established doesn't stay consistent the whole time.
Yeah, why would that not break anybody? If a movie or a book creates rules and a universe for you to live in, and then they break their own rules, I mean, that's like writing 101 of what you don't do, and that's the problem I have with this movie. Is it does it a lot. I think that the characters' motivations break from within what has been established. That's why I have problems with a lot of stuff. I'm just very critical, man.
Yeah,
Think about a lot of things.
I wasn't.
So something. Let's just move on here. Something I was. The character Doyle. I had to look it up afterwards because I didn't even remember his name. Doyle was like the dark-haired white guy.
The guy who doesn't.
He just fucking stood there and died.
Yeah, like I wish
tell
it was
me that
more
wasn't ridiculous.
clear what his internal thought. I couldn't tell what his motivation for his behavior there was. Like, let's say he did something stupid and like I don't even understand necessarily what he thought he was accomplishing by the movements he was taking. So that was my only problem of like, you didn't even give me a way to defend. Like, I don't understand why you weren't just being like, all right, I'm going to go inside. It was like kind of like, and like he doesn't.
He seemed paralyzed. He just stood there, which maybe you could make as an argument he was scared or something, but like he wasn't scared enough because he ran back to the ship to try to make it. So when Cooper was telling Tars or Case, whichever robot, he was like, go get her now. You see a shot of Doyle. He's literally just standing there with his arm out pointing at her.
Yeah.
He's not frantic. He's not trying to run with the robot and go help. He's literally just standing there like a signpost going, yep, she over there. The robot runs and gets her, runs past Doyle to the ship. All the while, what was Doyle doing? Did he just stand there the whole time like a scarecrow pointing? I mean, it was just ridiculous that he died. They could have done something to spice it up. Like, make him go after her and then realize, wait, I can't make it. We got to send the robot. Wait, fuck, now I'm too far. The robot can't save both of us. I got to turn around and run back, and then by then it's too late. You know, like, that would have been perfect.
Like, if you straight up change like, this is just ADR, you could even come up with a better reason of why he's paralyzed. Sure. It's just the fact that we got nothing. I think we can agree with it was like, huh? Okay,
he basically just died. Yeah, you go, what? And he just dies.
It's one of those scenes that, like, the movie confirmed they died before you noticed they were dead. And I was like, oh, that's not usually how that's supposed to work.
Right, yeah.
And it sucks because, like, I don't know that he really was anybody. You know, he was just science guy.
That was another thing. I didn't know what anyone's specialties were, really. I think they mentioned them, but
and like Dr. Brand only makes sense because you know she's the daughter of the main guy.
Yeah.
And then Cooper was a pilot, and then the black hole man, whose name I don't remember his name. I feel bad because he's a very sweet man.
Yeah, he is. Was Doyle like a plant dude, a biologist?
So I believe they're all employees of NASA of some variety. That is my understanding, is that like everybody's involved in this is a NASA project. So they're all scientists of some regard. Now, like, is one of, you know, a virologist and one's a, I don't know if that's ever explicitly stated.
Okay. Yeah,
because to ask me, it's like, I remember, and I feel, do you know the name of the guy that I'm talking about, the bald man?
No, I will.
I want to say his name is Don for some reason, but I don't think that's correct. But he felt like much more of the kind of spacey black hole, Neil deGrasse Tyson type of, like, whatever that type of specialty was. It felt like they were but like it seems like they're all supposed to be coming from
Bromley.
It is Romley. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because they call him Rom. But Rom.
That's right. Yeah.
I think they're all supposed to be the same specialty. I think Rom had an opportunity to show that he had knowledge, so it's easier to stick in your brain. And I don't think it's like one of those characters that I think in editing, like, they could have, like, you cut him out of every frame. What changes? He probably has a conversation that's nice. But, yeah, I think the problem was he just wasn't really, I don't know what his purpose was, other than it feels like the horror movie, they added this person because they need more people. That's why people are here. It's like, I didn't need him to die or live. Like, he just could have not been there, and for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, I mean, them going to a planet for a couple hours and getting delayed while
Kyle, I know why. He needed them because they couldn't think of a way to for the majority rule of what planet should they visit first.
Oh, sure, they needed
they needed more numbers. Yeah, no, I joke, but like it feels like he's there only for the story. He's not a character himself.
Yeah, and like you said earlier about his characters being too well rounded. That's a really good point. That like they are all not memorable in a certain way because they're all just kind of people. They're all kind of nice, but their motivations are there, but they're not really strong. Yeah, the characters in this movie are very mellow.
Yeah, and what I
put
did like at some point they highlight this idea of like, oh wait, man, when Michael Caine's brand dies, that those parting words were so heart wrenching too. But like this idea, motherfucker, I did it again. I started the sentence and I have an idea of why I brought that up. That Brand being motivated by the love of her life, trying to follow him. Like that's about the only thing any of the characters do to deviate from. Oh, I know what it is. It's about the idea of saving yourself versus saving the species, and the idea is like I had to lie to everybody to save the species. And it's just like, man, that's so. I loved that like kind of unreveal in that thing because it felt like the first time a character did something that was like did anything.
Yeah, it was a true betrayal.
I'm struggling to come up with the right words to articulate this. I'm sorry, but yeah, like but it was so interesting because I couldn't tell at first that
it was conflict. It felt more like honest conflict and a true betrayal, and that's what makes characters interesting is conflict. These kind of boring characters with really, really shallow peaks and valleys are never interesting, and that's part of this problem with this movie. That's why I couldn't even remember their names. Like as the credits were rolling, I was like, "Wait, what
and
were
like Murph
they named again?" Because they're all so boring.
And who's the other character? Remember, is Murph. Besides being talked about a lot, she's the only one who has like actual like is a dick, right? And I think understandably so. And it was an interesting juxtaposition about how she was so pissed the whole time but was working to get it done, whereas the son who was like kind of like, yeah, Dad, we're bros, but he didn't do anything. Like I don't know, he gave up on his dad after a while, and I just think that was
pretty much.
I can't believe you didn't mention it. Baby Timothy Chalamet was Tom as a kid, and I was like, why does he look so familiar? Anyway. That was fun.
That's Timothée. He mentioned specifically that he was disappointed in this movie, not because he said he thought his part was going to be a lot bigger. Not that anything was cut. He just because filming and on his first big Hollywood movie, he said it was
his role
it was so intense. Yeah, and then when you look at it in the movie as a whole, he's like, oh no, that's everything we did. Wow, okay, I was only in it for 20 minutes.
And what I still think that the first act of that movie is kind of hard to I have a hard time saying anything negative about it because I love the weird spy drone thing and like the implication when they got a flat, it was just like, oh hey, this happens. Like the roads are shitty now because no one's taking care of them. So everyone, like Tom knew how to patch a wheel.
Yeah.
He didn't want to do it in the road, but like the idea is he knew how. And I just like, I don't know. Those are other things I thought of were really cool world building of just by implying that he knows this stuff. It's just like,
And then they leave the planet completely.
Oh my God, you're right.
So
yeah.
something else that happened. I wish when I was thinking about this movie a week ago, I remembered very specifically the incidents, or not the incidents.
The incidents.
Sorry, my brain is no good today. The scenes specifically, but there was a lot of not only exposition but repetitive exposition. Like the characters in space would talk to each other about something, and then the characters on Earth would talk about that same thing to each other in a slightly different way. And it happened 2 or 3 times in the movie, and I was like, man, I get that like you need to show maybe the screen time of people filling in other people, but we can't just assume this happens off screen. We gotta watch the same exposition twice. Like I remember it happened a few times.
I think that's a good point. I agree that the dialogue is like he did write it so everyone can enjoy it, so that people like you will enjoy it less. I think it's and that is tough. That's like a tough pill to swallow, right? Like if that does take you out, you weren't the priority, right? And I think
you know what? Now that you mention people liking or disliking it, that's why I liked The Martian so much, because they had a gimmick that the guy was by himself and he had a camera, and so he he had motivation, he had a reason to explain everything he's doing to either people who might watch this and not know what happened, or just to be talking to himself because he's isolated and alone. Ironically, it's Matt Damon playing
we should definitely talk about that like right after this. Just go right into that because
yeah, I will. But you know what I'm saying is like that gimmick is awesome. That he's by himself and he's talking to the camera and he's explaining stuff. It's completely like, yep, I fully buy it. Go for it. But when you have a movie like this where it's like we said, a bunch of scientists talking to each other, they're all suddenly talking to each other like they're trying to teach each other the high school science.
The only time that it worked for me was actually a scene earlier in the NASA headquarters where it was like, I think that the scene starts off like, yeah, you said the same thing when you saw the ship, and then they cut to like a nice like transition shot to them having that conversation, and it was just I don't know. It was like one time where they were like kind of I didn't need to see the conversation, but it was kind of a cool way to set up. Anyway, it's not a big deal. But the next thing I want to talk.
So Dr. Mann.
Yeah. So they go to the first planet after the wormhole jump. I know we're not really explaining what's happening, but at least give some context here. Everyone's seen Interstellar.
It's a full spoiler. We assume people have seen it. Yeah.
So when they do have to pick between the 3 planets that the scientists have landed on, the first one they go to, too close to a black hole, causes the time to be much.
Yeah.
I do like that they set up relativity even before he takes off the planet too, just as a reminder to kind of brace yourself for that. This information's relevant.
Yeah.
And then they get back up to the ship, the devastating moment of realizing, oh, you lost 27 years. They were down on that planet, relatively speaking, for 27 years compared to everyone else. So that made it so they don't have enough fuel to make it to all of the different planets. They have to pick one. There's one that would go to Dr. Mann's lover. That's why she wants to go to that planet. But he's not pinging anymore, so they're not sure if he's okay. Whereas Dr. Mann has got one planet way out, and he's actively saying, like, yes, I'm here, come visit. They basically just say, we're not listening to you because you're only going there because you love the dude. So we're going to reject your love.
Let's go to the guy with the live pings and the good data. Let's go there and see.
So then that's when we land on a planet, and Matt Damon plays.
Very cool ice planet.
Yeah. So now you can. I just wanted to give some context, set that up.
Right. So, instead of getting in my passionate, angry, ranty state that I normally do, I will just say this: I think the entirety of Matt Damon's character was so ludicrous and over the top, and I think he could have solved all of his issues with a simple conversation. He could have sat everybody down and went, guys, I'm sorry. I misled you to come here because I've been lonely and I wanted to be rescued. And I want to finish the mission by going to the other planet. He could have sat there and said that to these fucking people. And instead, it's this wild... He even set a booby trap on the old robot, knowing that somebody would activate it and blow themselves up, and like tried to kill Cooper, but then 10 minutes before... See, I'm already getting into my ranty state. I can't help it. So that's what I want to say first. How do you feel about it?
I have the way that... Okay, I totally hear you. Your rant is like... You're pretty justified in your rant. Now, the way for one, I'm going to commend Matt Damon on his act. I love Matt Damon. He's a great actor. His reaction to being woken up by a human being was beautiful. Oh my God, it was so ugly and uncomfortable, but it was so, like, you could tell this is the first time he saw somebody in a long time, and he's overwhelmed. And I just thought that was awesome. My understanding was that he does all that because he doesn't want to say, he doesn't give a shit about the thing anymore. He wants to just go home, and he's now just going to steal the shit to leave because he knows he can't convince them. That is what I believed as it was happening, as to why it was. Now, it's a little...
I don't think he wanted to go home. He wanted to finish the mission.
No, he did not. Absolutely not. Okay, I'm saying this like it's objective fact. I'm sorry. I know sometimes it sounds like I'm basically dismissing, but I'm definitely... What I mean is that when he talks about faking the data to them, when he talks about what's in the atmosphere to like, for some reason in my mind, I thought it was kind of, he said something or did something that made it clear in my head that he was saying that, no, we need to go home. Like, the plan isn't, because if it was just to go to the other planet, you're right. I think he would have done that because he wouldn't have to fake this data. It's clear that it's not good. That's why I thought he pretty explicitly was like angry and did this because Cooper was going not home.
Huh. I could have sworn remember him specifically mentioning the mission and completing the mission multiple times.
That is so this is what I'm going to say, because he does say that to them before he reveals, like, almost it's kind of like the first day after, as he's convincing them of this fake data. Once you pierce the ice ceiling and get to the surface of the planet, this is where all the life is. So like he's trying to convince them so he can separate them, so he can take the ship and leave. That is what I remember the sequence being. Now, if what you're remembering is right, then I agree, then that's bullshit. But in my brain, he is lying to their faces specifically because he wants to abandon the mission. It was too hard. People died. He was alone for too long. I just need to go home. And that's why he acts like a complete fucking idiot when he's trying to dock, and he's ignoring all these protocols. He just go.
Again, he just wants another thing where I'm like, any two brain celled fucking idiot would know that like a vacuum will be created in space if you open a door to open space.
Yes, I think you're right there.
He would not have forced the override on that protocol on a false dock.
It seems surprising.
Cooper wouldn't have had to say, don't dock because you'll cause a vacuum and it'll depressurize. Like, Dr. Mann knows all of that. He wouldn't be acting that way. He wouldn't be doing that as a scientist. And B, Cooper wouldn't have to be explaining it to him because he already knows. That's other little things where I'm like, yeah, I can see that Nolan is writing this so that everyone in the world understands what's happening.
That's a good point, Kyle.
Watch this movie.
I think you are objectively 100% correct. That's not even an emotional feeling. It may not matter to some people, but I think you're right that especially with the airlock and the air seal, like he knows that he's not getting a perfect seal. This is going to happen. Yeah. Now, what I think the big difference, I think, in the way we interpret when characters go off script, let's call it that, where they're not acting in what would be a logical sense, I think I'm able to, in universe, justify why, like, cause I don't know if you know this, Kyle. I'm a big old hot mess of emotions a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of the, like, logically speaking, I should do this, but that feels wrong and I do that. So in a lot of ways, I think my life experience has molded me to see that stuff as, like, sometimes it's bad writing. I think when you're talking about, like, with the man and the ceiling, like, that's obvious. But, like, I can at least in my brain understand why someone would reject the logical side of their brain and just keep going and be like, it'll be fine. And I think that's just one big difference in our perspectives, which is neither good nor bad. I just think it's interesting. I think that's
I just think if you're doing something that you know will kill you,
I mean, it's fair.
You can probably go like, all right, wait. I know I'm trying to be emotional, but I got a problem solve here.
And it's interesting how much he talks about the survival instinct of humans. And I think they did highlight that to prove why he would be doing all this, because he believes this is this way to survive or whatever. But I do think it's interesting that he's the character that really talks about are you seeing your kids now? I love them trying to talk them through dying. Oh, that was funny. Like, the movie's not very funny.
Oh, God.
Yeah. I love just how much of a loser Dr. Mann was, because they set him up as a mythical, he is the best of us. And then to be like a loser dweeb who's like selfish and sucks, kind of, to me, was like it's a subversion. I think some people will be like, well, what is it saying? Like, that's just but I don't know. I just thought that was it entertained me.
Speaking of being entertained, like when they resurrect him from the dead, or they resurrect him,
Lazarus.
Essentially, Matt Damon says, yeah, exactly. Matt Damon says, "You've literally resurrected me from the dead," and Cooper responds, "Lazarus."
Well, you know why,
man.
right?
No one could have fucking figured that out. No, you couldn't have just left it at that line of literally raised me from the dead. You gotta wonder. And have the audience go like, "Oh, Lazarus, yeah, that's the mission name." No, they literally say it out loud. Like, not, I could see him turning to the camera and knocking on the lens, being like, "Hey, dummies, you remember this reference?" Like, that shit just, I feel personally insulted
That's so
when
wow. That's so
when
interesting.
scripts are written, because yeah, I know obviously it isn't personal, but I'm saying it's like that's a reason why I love Denis Villeneuve so fucking much, because I feel like his movies respect the audience so much. He doesn't dumb anything down. Like, he assumes you're an adult watching an adult movie. Even if you don't get something, you'll Google it later and figure it out. Like, I feel respected as a viewer when I watch certain movies. Like, David Fincher is kind of the same way. I feel respected as a viewer. Whereas Christopher Nolan, I feel the opposite. I feel insulted. I feel like he assumes everyone is a teenager that's an idiot.
So
watching
let me
his
ask you
movies.
this,
Like,
Kyle. What if your perspective is he's doing that not for you, but for the 17-year-old who wants to watch it? And this way you both can watch it and both enjoy it. I'm not saying you have to change
But
your opinion.
it's-
Hold on. I'm just saying that's that it feels that is what I
No,
think
but-
for me, how I see it and why it doesn't bother me. Continue.
It's the exact things he's adding so that a 17-year-old dummy will enjoy it that makes me not enjoy it. So it can't be, they're almost mutually exclusive for me. You either respect your audience or you're writing a blockbuster film that you want everyone from ages 13 to 50 to watch. And if you're going for that blockbuster audience, I just feel like, going into the sci-fi realm where you have to explain potentially complex systems is like not where you should be, if that's the type. Like, Inception was perfect because it was all made up, which I've only seen Inception once, and I thought, again, because it's Christopher Nolan.
Don't
I
watch
kind
it,
of
Kyle.
have
You're
a
going to
bias
hate it.
against him.
I think Interstellar
I know,
is probably better.
Yeah, I remember even when I was young, I was like, that was a very visually stunning movie, but it's kind of stupid. But the thing is, it's all made up anyway. It's all sci-fi. It's like a made up thing and technology that they have, so it's perfectly fine if they have to explain all the made up jargon to us. But in a movie like this, where they're trying really hard to operate with real world physics, and they're also breaking it down and explaining it to us like we're dummies, that's what bothers me.
I can't
if that's
convince
fair.
you. So the thing is, like, the only thing that's different between how you view it and I view it is that, like, I know that section isn't for me, and I don't get insulted that I shouldn't. I'm not trying to. Let me rephrase that.
No, I get it.
It's just that, like, I think he's trying to get more people to watch these types of movies. So you do have to dumb them down a little bit, but it doesn't stop it from. I think what he would think is the vision he had for the movie. It's just allowing more people to see it. And I think you are a niche person. You don't want other people. If there was a gatekeeper I know in real life, it's probably you a little bit about, like, you like it when it's not the most popular thing because you don't like it when those types of devices have to get used to get people who aren't here for the ride. Like, you don't want them to alter the ride to get more people in. More people should want to fit into the ride. I know it's not the cleanest metaphor, but I think that's a fair assessment of, like, the difference, you know what I mean? Or maybe...
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just harkens back to what I said before, that I like to feel respected as a viewer.
For
and
sure.
I feel disrespected when I watch these certain things. And
yeah, I totally see it.
it's like... Damn, see, this is me being, like, flu-brained. I fucking forgot what you just said, and I wanted to touch on it, but now I can't remember.
It's all right. But the most part is I can see why you can't get past it. I feel bad for you, man. You're missing out on a lot of stuff.
No, because the thing is, I enjoy being able to pick things apart like this. That's another thing that sort of bleeds into your real life as well. You have a harder time with negativity and people hating on stuff, whereas I get genuine enjoyment.
I love tearing down creative works. Hell yeah, brother.
Yeah, like, I like seeing things and thinking about them and having a reaction. And as you have said when we started this whole podcast off, is that, like, you like that I'm able to dislike something but also justify why I dislike it.
Yeah, you're allowed to have your opinions. Unfortunately, for most other people, they aren't. You're allowed to have your bad opinion because you're able to defend it.
Thank you. Yeah. So We're on an hour now. I don't remember exactly how much of the beginning will be cut out.
Yeah.
I think
So what I'll say,
probably try to move on.
I
to
was just gonna,
wrapping up.
I was just gonna say the last thing I did want to, even if you want to cut this out of the podcast, that's fine. The ending, the epilogue for that movie. Boo!
Okay, yeah.
Boo! This epilogue. Boo!
Thank you.
What the hell was that, brother? Okay, so this is my two things.
Okay, let's hear it.
All
you
right.
didn't like something.
See,
Cool.
I told you I dislike things. I tend to have more soft words, or I. So
You forgive a lot more things than
I loved the black hole sequence. I visually,
of course, who wouldn't?
God, that was so cool.
crazy, man.
And the sound mixing on that, where it's just anyway. And I was able to follow a lot more of the logic, what he was trying to say, the science fi. I understand the concept of like why, when they talk about fifth dimensional beings, what that actually means. And they even set up a line real early with the girl, Dr. Brand. I'm sorry, I don't remember your first name, Anne Hathaway.
Yeah.
That like a being that's outside of time could see them as like they could step up or step down, and then the tesseract that he's in is literally like a vertical stare and stuff. But there's a really dumb game called The Plucky Squire, and the whole gimmick of the game is you hop from 2D into 3D.
Okay.
But the 2D, like when you're in the 2D space, there are like, other characters that only can exist there. And when you pop out of 3D, they can't see you anymore. But you're still there. You're just in a space that those beings physically cannot see with their eyes. It's just,
Yeah.
And like seeing a visual of that made me understand kind of like, as a human, you can't wrap your head around perceiving time except linearly. Like we just don't have the technology. It's just not, our brains aren't chiseled that way. But these beings, and like the idea that something could do that, and I don't quite understand at the end of they were too quick to say like, oh, we sent ourselves here, and then also, oh no, these fifth dimensional beings sent us. It was kind of it was kind of like Bolt trying to say like you manifest your own destiny, right? Like I caused my own leaving to say, you know what I mean? Like or did something allow him to do that? And then they're also like, wait, no, Cooper, I'm not the one who was chosen. It was my daughter. And I was like, I feel like he got those aha moments to explain to the camera too quickly that I couldn't quite follow. But what I will say is I love how cheesy and romantic the message of the movie was love was a physical force, and I just like the idea that it is an emotion. When they talk about and like they use the scientific terms of like how we talk about emotions, and I know it's really cheesy. You didn't like. As soon as I heard it, I was like, I think Brianna may even remember me saying like, Kyle's gonna hate this. But I love
So I absolutely hate it.
But yes. I guess I don't understand. So what is it about it other than like divorce it from like romantic books? But this concept of the connection that we feel to specific people is so powerful that it is beyond it is more powerful than we give it credit. What about that is so like, boo, this is terrible, get out of here.
So love as a concept of, right, we love dead people, we love alive people, we love somebody if they're in a black hole or on another planet or in another dimension, whatever, we will always love them, right? Like that's literally true. There's no disputing that. But what bothers me is that it is some sort of it itself is a force. Because to me, I go like, yeah, love is mostly just kind of chemical stuff in your body that makes you think stuff. And when you think about someone you love, you get the little butterflies in your stomach. But your love, your thinking of them has no bearing or effect on that person physically anywhere else ever. We're not interlinked mentally like a, quantumly entangled people. If you die, you don't know that I love you anymore. And it doesn't matter if I love you anymore because you're dead to you. So the fact that they're saying love is, I don't know. I guess I also...
Did you logic yourself into being like, well, love doesn't make sense as a quantum force?
Yeah.
And like I jokingly say that, but like legitimately, if it's just like the idea that it being a physical force to you is a bit too far, and you don't like that premise, like that's fine. I just wanted to know what your biggest like beef with the conceit there.
Yeah, it's just way too cheesy, and
It is cheesy
when
for
you're
this movie. I will say it was kind of
even within this movie, I was like, "Wow, wait, really?"
Yeah.
When I first watched it, I remember thinking, like, "No way, this is the message that they're trying to hit me with at the very end." Good God, and it's woven in through the whole movie, of course. That's like the whole point. But I just think that love in the physical reality of our existence would just has no bearing on anything.
yeah. I mean, true. It is true.
It doesn't make any sense.
And I guess okay.
And like, why did the fifth dimension beings go create this unbelievably insane puzzle for us to solve when they could have just fucking emailed the answer to the equation?
So this is where my superior understanding of the dimensional is this
Yes.
idea that like you should not be able to interact with a dimension above or below you. Like, I guess we don't
they
really
are.
have a way to but the thing they made could be interacted with, not necessarily us directly. Like they
So
can't.
then make a machine that sends an email with the correct answer.
Oh shit! You're right. Why didn't they just?
See what I'm
They
saying?
just they haven't made the computer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You know. I didn't
So
think
like
of that.
hiding this time tesseract inside of a black hole. I mean,
So my
and somehow
problem.
them like trying to convince us that love is somehow involved in this when really it's just a connection between father and daughter. But like,
I don't know. The other
It's
point.
just all too much at the end.
The other point
too
being
silly.
that love that Brand had for her guy would have been the right one, because I think they should have just made this a bit more clear, was that Dr. Brand, like she landed on the planet and there's people. They're like, it's going.
Yep. Yep, it's good.
So like that was the other kind of tie-in. Is like, look, she was
Did
right.
we
the
find
whole
out
time.
why he stops pinging them? If his planet is
Oh,
good?
you're right. And no, they don't. I mean, because the movie ends with her on the planet.
Yeah, on the planet. And then
so
Cooper chasing after her.
I love that they gave Murph and McConaughey a moment, but I also love that she's like, "Hey, I had to move on. I have a family already." Like, it didn't. I don't think it made a lot of sense when you think about like the context of. I haven't seen my dad in 60 years, but in some ways he's been dead in her mind for 50. But the idea, she's like, "Oh, go away. I got my kids to deal with." Like, I know it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
It did feel kind of like Kyle, this is a great video game script. This feels the way that I think if it was
Sure,
all the way the characters are talking were written as NPC dialogue I think like this would read as a good video. I know it's probably an insult, but like that would read as a really good video game writing, right? Like the way
Yeah,
that
probably.
it's just kind of some of it is very emotionally detached, except for the scenes where they're very there. But like, oh, I'm on my deathbed. I'm seeing my dad for the first time. They have a very cute little line, and then she kind of gives him a quest, and then she dies.
Yep. Yep. Gives him a quest. You're exactly right. Yeah, and something else that bothered me too, and maybe somehow you can justify this to me, but I absolutely also did not buy that Murph somehow figured out it was her own father sending her.
Oh no, there's 0%.
These
Yeah,
messages.
no.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I'm.
It was you. You were my ghost. How?
And it's like
How do you get there?
I hated it too, by the way. Just that she understood that it was her dad. It would have been fine if she's like, "Oh, you were a person," or like someone is communicating with me. It didn't necessarily have to be her dad, and I would have been more like, okay. But it's, I think it's just this. Maybe it's the idea that she just wants that to be the case, and that's what she believes because like
Yeah, and then it happens to be.
it just happens to be true.
like the word stay and then coordinates to a super secret NASA base. Those two things she figures out 25 years later. Oh, it's my dad. Oh, duh. Dad survived for 30 years out in space and went through a black hole and ended up in a tesseract created by fifth dimension beings that allowed him to send me this message. Oh, duh.
Kyle,
it's like,
remember when we came up with that script just a couple of days ago? No, but I think that's
bonkers.
That fudge. Fucky fudge. But yes, I agree. I don't think that made sense. And like, if you cut out her saying, like I said, if she just was like, oh, I did have a ghost. That alone, I think, would have probably at least been. It wouldn't have been something you bitched about. But yeah, I do think that the idea that she gets it just seems a little silly. I don't know. But it's one of those lines that I'm just kind of like, oh, that's what it was, is the magic of his movie making that can make you not register that as bad as it is in the moment.
Yeah.
Of like,
that's what I'm saying. It's like the visuals, the score, and the acting in this are all they're little. I keep calling them cheat codes because they all work marvelously to manipulate the audience into thinking that the movie is something much greater than it is. For me, of course.
And I will say, for the record, I would be happy to be manipulated if that's how all of it sounded, acted, and looked. You know what I mean? Like manipulate the shit out of me, brother.
If you come out and enjoy it, that's great.
I thought the ending was a little too optimistic, a little too happy. I thought that usually I don't like it when a character commits a sacrifice and then they get to live. I just don't love that as a writing trope in general.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I just like then your sacrifice is just they're the hero. Of course, they're willing to go that far. But like it's supposed to, I don't know. I'll have to think about digest my thoughts on why I don't like that as much. But so the idea that he survives is kind of like, really, all right. And even like in the scenario of like, I'm not even mad that he got spit back out in space. I would love to if the movie ends with him just like kind of adrift, like up. He ended up where he wanted to be, amongst the stars. You know, he's one with the. But and like he saved the people. No one will know. And like it's really sad. A lot of this is like about miscommunication and not being able to share information. And I don't know. I was really moved by multiple sequences in this movie. Some of the most powerful just acting. I found the emotional beats hit me. But then when you're talking about but ironically, the meat of the movie about like the plot and the what's happening, that writing is kind of just like I was entertained by it. Like in that I know that they're just explaining this to me, but I'm like, all right, what do you got for me, guys? What's next? That kind of that's kind of the way I learned to enjoy it, not as like an art piece, if you will. I'd love to watch Memento and see if I still feel like if how was the pre-Hollywood Nolan. I guess he was probably Hollywood then too, but I'm just curious if it's changed that much over the time. But him surviving, I'm like, I don't care that much, but I kind of hated it even more that she's like, you need to go find Dr. Brand, of course.
Yeah.
It's like, really?
Yeah, I think him
back on the farm would have been fine.
The movie was set up so that there had to be closure between Dad and Murph.
Oh, I know. That's a good point. But and like some ways, like her discovering that he was the ghost could have been the closure, right?
Yeah, sure.
Like,
and then we know that she died knowing that. Mm-hmm. But see, then we don't. But then Cooper won't know that his daughter knew.
That's so true. He'll die thinking she hated him. Oh,
yeah. But then they could, I don't know, show him a video of her being like, "I knew it was you, Dad," and he goes, "Oh, yay!"
Yeah, I mean,
but yeah, I had it. Like you said, that the epilogue, the whole ending of this movie, obviously.
Yeah, I call it, so the way I say it is like the ending is him in the Tesseract and then being released after getting the info out. And the epilogue is basically everything on, like, I guess the Saturn satellite.
Okay, yeah.
So I think it limps across the finish line because I think, like, even if the script was, like, going too quick inside the Tesseract to really follow, the visuals and just, like, the music, and I was just like, oh, yeah, this is cool. This is fun. Let's just wrap this thing up. And as someone who's played a lot of JRPGs, this feels like the final dungeon boss twist where they expout 50 hours of dialogue and it turns out the bad guy was someone else the whole time. that's the level of like convoluted I'm adjusted to. So like that level of convoluted feels like, oh yeah, I get this. I'm here for it. So like my tolerance for convoluted bullshit is higher, but I also don't think it was very good. Like I am more on board with what like the plot of what was happening, but not the delivery and the way it's explained and the emotions I was feeling in the moment.
Also, are we supposed to assume that Cooper is going to Dr. Brand to like court her and be with her, or is just because he's familiar with her and she's friends with him that they want to go there?
So this is my interpretation: is that she's telling him to go there because his future, like the not romantic, but like she represents the future of humanity, and that's what he kind of wanted to be. And this is his payout was where Brand is in that planet. That's where his future is. It isn't here with like, you know, the farms on Earth. It's the future. It's the colony. So that's what I didn't think it was romantic. And I like that there was no romance in this movie, like at all.
Yeah, that was nice.
Except for Topher fucking Grace, whatever that was.
Right, one kiss at the end there. I guess they're. You're my boyfriend now.
I don't. Yeah, whatever, man.
Yeah, because there was no chemistry between them either. It very much felt like they were just friends or colleagues.
Oh, Kyle, that I wanted to bring this up. At the end of almost every Nolan movie, they have this like main character in scene driving or going, not responding to this secondary character who asks them a bunch of questions about like what's going on, their emotional state. It happens in The Dark Knight when like they're transporting the Joker by he's like in the street shooting the gun, and they eventually have the big flip. You know that big scene in The Dark Knight?
Yeah.
Well, there's like a cop talking to one of the characters who's disguised as another cop, but he keeps asking questions really quickly when it's a really high intensity action scene. And that's what Topher Grace was doing, where he was just like asking a bunch of questions and he doesn't get any answers from her, but he keeps asking to keep cutting back. Look it up. I don't know how to explain this, but this is the thing.
Interesting. Okay.
Nolan has done this in multiple movies that I remember. This this is like there's A characters and B this is like a C character where they're only in the movie for 20 minutes, but they're very important for that entire section. Like they're treated like they've been here the whole time and that they're important, but they haven't been here the whole time and they're not important. But the movie acts like they are. I don't know. It's a weird thing, but it's something I noticed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to try to remember that. So we are now encroaching on hour 20, probably way too long. Probably means nobody listens to this stuff.
Yeah, no one does. It's fine.
Yeah. Any of those work people coming through on their promises?
I will say we're going to test Shay out. She is, ironically, my number one supporter on this whole dumb podcast thing.
Oh yeah.
She got very upset that I shout out Cass and not her.
She actually listened to that?
She listened enough to give me shit about it. I don't know how much of the podcast she listened to, but
dude, you know what? The metrics show a 27-year-old female listened to like 6 minutes of one of our podcasts.
Well, that's not Shay. She's
that
like
was her.
22.
Well, maybe it was an age range.
That would make
still,
sense.
I mean, a girl in their 20s, that specific amount of.
That's a very exciting listener base. All right. But,
yeah.
So yes, Shay, you're. I apologize, and if you actually get to this point, I will give you $50. She will never hear this. No. I promise.
Okay, I was gonna say that's a crazy fucking promise to make.
I'm a baller. What can I say?
Here it is. One female, age range 23 to 27.
That could have been.
That's the metric.
Interesting, because I was like, oh, that might be Brianna, but no, she's not in that age range either. Yeah, look now.
Damn.
23 to 27, female. So unless Shay is lying on her Spotify profile, we don't know who listened to the podcast. Was it YouTube or Spotify?
Spotify. They listen to 6 minutes.
Interesting.
6 minutes or something.
Well, now we got a thumbnail.
We did call out Cass in the beginning of that episode, so it would make sense that she might have heard that and gotten so infuriated she exited out.
Oh.
That was it for her.
All right. Well, we'll wrap this up. And next time, what are we doing? I don't know if
we don't talk about that here. We'll talk about or I guess this is what we decided we should do so that we give listeners something to look forward to. Mm-hmm. Again, we don't know, so we got to clean this part up.
Did you want to start with the Penguin?
Oh, sure. If you're going to watch it all,
So how do you?
that's going to be a 7-hour podcast.
Do you want to break it up
We're
by
gonna have to-
like maybe not every week, but we could do like a I don't know. I just don't know if you want to do a couple episode like discussion windows at a time, like and break it up over time.
The problem is, I watched I watched 4 episodes in a row, binged it a little bit, and then I took about a month break, and then I finished it just the other day. And I had a lot of thoughts and a lot of notes while watching it, but I didn't write down anything because I didn't think we would actually end up talking about the Penguin. So I feel like if I wanted to give it a very fair discussion, I'd have to rewatch it all and take notes, and I absolutely don't want to do that because it was kind of mediocre.
Okay, that's fine. I don't feel ultra compelled to do it. I just know you mentioned it.
Okay.
None of the superhero stuff.
Nah, I don't know what to watch next week.
We'll
talk about it later.
discuss it later. No one's listening to this deep anyway.
One thing I will say is, if there's Christopher Nolan fans out there that just love him and hate to listen to me rail on him, I thought Oppenheimer was one of the best movies I've seen in like 10 years.
Dude, I loved Oppenheimer too, and I thought I was going to hate it.
No, everyone did. They're like a 3-hour biopic about Oppenheimer that like doesn't show any kind of war or anything. That's going to be stupid, but it went by so fast.
Yeah.
It was so compelling. I was so invested. Phenomenal music and visuals and acting, of course, but the writing in that movie didn't actually feel stupid.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe.
Yeah, that movie was holy cow.
Interesting. I had no idea you felt that way about it. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah. I've been wanting to rewatch it. Maybe we could talk about Oppenheimer next.
Sure.
But anyways, we'll figure
We'll figure it out later. Yeah.
Alrighty, that's the end of this episode, number 3.
3 down.
Talk to everyone later.
I love you. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.